There we are now. There's your 10.
Hiya, boss. Here's 2 tens. Give me a 5. You did it to me. And he did it to me, too.
Comedy is a dramatic work that is often humorous or satirical in tone. The essence of comedy is a satire of society, a mockery of the life in which the audience lives. And throughout the ages, comedians have communicated this parody of life in many different ways. Evolving alongside of the technology, comedy in the last 100 years has changed from vaudevillian slapstick to political satire and stand-up. Slapstick was one of the first styles to make the transition from vaudeville to cinema, and is the foundation for most comedies. It was guided by the ambitious goals of Mack Sennett that led to the formation of the Keystone Film Company devoted to comedic film. Sennett lived in a burlesque district of New York City, and it is there that he learned how to make audiences laugh. He worked under D.W. Griffith for 4 years until 1912, when Sennett left Griffith and the Biograph Film Company to form his own filming company. His first films were with Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. Then in 1914, Sennett scouted a young Englishman, Charlie Chaplin, and signed him to a contract of 9 short films. 3 years later, Buster Keaton was hired by Sennett, earning his place among the stars of slapstick. They were masters of slapstick because they were experts with timing. Chaplin in particular would practice a single shot for hours to perfect the timing, and it is this timing that makes slapstick humor so appealing. Slapstick comedy is based on good timing, and Chaplin perfected the art of finding the right moment to unleash the punchline. Lou Costello and the Howard brothers from the Three Stooges will recall that their inspiration came from Chaplin and his mastery of comedic timing. Chaplin made over 89 films from 1914 to 1967, and almost all were in the slapstick style. Slapstick was, and still is, a boisterous form of comedy, marked by chases, collisions, and crude practical jokes. The comedians of slapstick had to communicate their humor through exaggerated body language and extreme reactions until sound was introduced to films. The best slapstick comedians with sound were the Three Stooges. These 3 men made language as much a part of their act as the occasional eye poke or head bop.
Hey, what's the idea of spoiling the game?
I was for onesies.
Well, here's twosies.
Oh, he was a onesie? You get him to...
Here's fivesies.
The Stooges' act was based solely on reactions.
Get your hand out of my face. That ain't my hand, it's your hand. All right, you asked for it. Ow! How you doing?
They mastered the art of reacting their way through a picture in over 200 short and 6 full-length films from 1934 to 1975. The Three Stooges would be the last of the slapstick comedians. Today, the only true slapstick comedy is from animated shows, such as The Simpsons. Slapstick would soon change because with the onset of sound and pictures, people wanted audio humor as well, similar to what is heard on the radio. The kind of humor that would be readily provided by the dynamic duos of Martin and Lewis, Burns and Allen, and of course, Abbott and Costello. Comedy teams in vaudeville would use a lot of slapstick with some quick one-liners to accentuate the gag, but it was mainly slapstick. With the creation of talkies, the straight man could now harass and outthink the funny man, giving away for a new style of comedy, the double talk and smart humor. The first duo of disaster was Laurel and Hardy. These 2 men would create massive situations from small everyday events. However, even after the introduction of sound, they were still primarily slapstick. The first truly straight man funny man act to reach the media was the Burns and Allen Show, which started on the radio in 1932. George Burns played the straight man who had to cope with his zany housewife, Gracie Allen. At the same time, a second comedy duo was starting, that of Abbott and Costello. Starting in the mid-30s as a radio act in the Kate Smith Hour radio show, They soon branched out in the films with their first movie, One Night in the Tropics in 1940. This was the first of over 36 full-length films, along with their own TV show.
Number, please.
Alexander, Toto.
I can't hear you.
Alexander, Toto.
Louder, please.
If I talk any louder, I will have to call them up. They'll hear me.
Abbott and Costello took the idea of a funny man to the extreme and would play off Costello's innocence and create some of comedy's timeless lines, such as,
Now, what is it you want to know?
What is the fella's name on third base?
What is the fella's name on second base?
I'm not asking you who's on second.
Who's on first?
I don't know. Third base.
Abbott would always swindle Costello or put him in impossible situations, and Costello was so trusting that he would never retaliate. There were also times when Costello would spin the meaning of a word, making a gag out of one line.
I have to wait. I ordered a strawberry sundae.
You did? What day is it today?
Friday.
You got 2 more days to wait.
They would remain as a comedy team until they broke up in November of 1956. They created the model for dynamic duos with the combinations of Jackie Gleason and Art Carney, Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, and many others would mimic in the future. Abbott and Costello were not the only comedy team in the 1940s. Martin and Lewis would also prove to be amazing comedians in their own right. Coming together in January 1947 at the 500 Club in Atlantic City, the two would remain a duo until October 1956. Dean Martin, with his amazing voice and straight face, was the polar opposite of his partner. Jerry Lewis was unique in that he was so flamboyant and loud, anything he did to interrupt Dean or the story was considered hilarious.
Hey! What is it?
I told you to stay back there, didn't I? Didn't I tell you to stay back there? I think
Making over 18 films together, the duo added a new twist to comedy, public insults. Never has a team insulted each other more than Martin and Lewis, and today that style of comedy is very popular.
You're just as nasty as you. You don't have any consideration for me. I always get pushed around. You don't care that people's got feelings, that's all. I don't mind being a comedian and everything and taking the jokes, but I got feelings. I work hard and everybody knows that nobody has
The dynamic duo is based on the straight man setting up the funny man to react in such a way that it is entertaining. Essentially, the straight man lays the foundation of a gag, allowing the funny man to release the punchline. This combination works so well because people loved seeing somebody else take the fall. Today, the main dynamic duo is Will and Grace. Will plays the straight man to Grace's funny woman. The original duo gags came from vaudeville and slapstick. Comedic duos took these old gags and added smart humor to the mix. Soon audiences were craving smart humor over everything.
Can't push a square block into a round hole. No? Then how did you get your head in your hat?
One of the first comedians to create an act based on smart humor was Red Skelton. He would create a 5-minute monologue for every show. His TV show began in 1951 and ran in 1971, and each show would have Skelton delivering some piece of stand-up material.
Halloween's a lot of fun, though. I mean, I remember when I was a little kid, I was so ugly, and my mother was so poor, she couldn't buy a pumpkin, so she used to hold me up at the window.
Stand-up soon became mainstream with the addition of late-night television. Steve Allen was the first late show host, premiering in 1954. Then in 1957 it became the Jack Paar Show until Johnny Carson took over in 1962. These shows were full of smart humor and stand-up material. Tonight Show also contained a lot of political satire, mocking the government in every show. Stand-up is comedy where a performer stands alone on a stage and delivers a comedic monologue. Sometimes it is practical in nature, but is usually about society and current events. Today, it is the primary way that young comedians break into the business. We adore great stand-up, and the best make it to Hollywood and beyond. Jay Leno and David Letterman both became hosts of the syndicated late-night shows, and people like Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, George Carlin, and Jerry Seinfeld are named synonymous with modern comedy. But has comedy reached its ultimate form? Only time will tell if comedy is perfect. Or perhaps what makes comedy funny is that it will never be perfect.
But you don't understand, Osgood. I'm a man. Well, nobody's perfect.